Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. From a young age, I was taught that life doesn't tolerate weakness. A lesson I took to heart and never forgot. For 22 years I was married to Sophia, and for 15, I had painstakingly built my empire from nothing. We were also raising our twin sons, now 3 years old. My entire world seemed to rest on a foundation I believed was unshakable. I've since learned that even the most solid ground can give way when someone's been secretly undermining it. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. I had dedicated my life to constructing homes for other families, while my own was slowly falling apart. Perhaps I was always better at building than at maintaining. This is probably why I failed to notice the signs sooner, or maybe I was just unwilling to see them. Still, the truth has a way of revealing itself, much like a small water stain that eventually causes the entire ceiling to collapse. Growing up in a tough part of the city, my single mother worked as a janitor at night and refused to be pushed around during the day. She instilled 2 crucial principles in me. Always outwork everyone else and never let anyone disrespect you twice. The first principle helped me build my business. The second was about to transform my life in ways I couldn't have imagined. I met Sophia back when I was just a laborer, swinging hammers instead of signing big contracts. She was a legal assistant at a firm that handled property closings, and I was there trying to sort out a simple permit issue. I was captivated by her ability to make even the most mundane legal documents feel significant. She treated every client with a level of care and attention to detail that drew me in. I believed she would bring that same dedication to our relationship. For the first decade, she did. Sophia was my rock during the lean years as I launched Sterling Construction. She celebrated every small victory and never complained about my 16-hour workdays that were necessary to win the contracts that would eventually make us rich. She was by my side when we bought our first house, a small 3-bedroom I renovated myself on weekends. She was there when we moved into the sprawling estate in the countryside, a clear signal that Marcus Sterling had arrived. Our twins were born in the 12th year of our marriage, and for a time, everything felt perfect. Little Daniel and Liam were healthy, beautiful boys who looked like smaller versions of me but had their mother's calm nature. I threw myself into fatherhood with the same all-or-nothing commitment I applied to everything else. I constructed a playground in our backyard that was better than any local park. I coached their little league teams and never missed a game. I was determined to give them the present father I'd never had. But success can change people, and perhaps it was foolish of me to think Sophia would be immune. As Sterling Construction grew from a small crew to over 200 employees, securing major municipal contracts and high-end residential projects, the money began to pour in. This was serious wealth, the kind that opened doors, created opportunities, and, it seemed, temptations. Sophia started spending more time with other wives at the country club we joined. She became involved with various charity committees and began attending luncheon meetings and evening galas that I was usually too busy to attend. Initially, I encouraged it, thinking it was healthy for her to have her own interests and social circle. I was proud that my wife could navigate those circles, that she had evolved from a working-class legal assistant into a woman who belonged among the wealthiest families in the county. The first hint of trouble appeared about 6 months ago, though I didn't recognize it at the time. Sophia's replies to my texts began to take longer. She had always been quick to respond, even to mundane things like dinner plans or the boys' schedules. Suddenly, hours would go by before I'd hear from her. When I asked, she would laugh it off, claiming she was caught up with a committee or a charity event. Then came the phone calls she'd step outside to take. "Just Laura from the hospital fundraiser," she'd say, or, "Sarah needs advice about her divorce lawyer." It was always a female friend, always some sort of crisis that required privacy. I didn't question it because I trusted her. More than that, I was consumed by my own success. Sterling Construction had just secured the biggest contract in the company's history, a mixed-use development that would keep us busy for 3 years and secure our financial future. The second crack was more difficult to ignore. Sophia started going to the gym at odd hours, claiming she wanted to avoid the crowds. She'd leave after dinner when most people were unwinding and return energized in a way that didn't suggest a simple workout. Her entire routine shifted. She started buying new clothes that were more fitted and eye-catching. She got her hair styled more often and began wearing makeup for simple errands. When I complimented her on these changes, she would deflect or change the subject. When I suggested we go out more often, she would say she was too tired or had other commitments. The space between us widened slowly, like a gradual freezing of water. You don't notice the process until suddenly everything is a sheet of ice. The third crack was the one that finally made me pay attention. Sophia's mother, Patricia, had always been a close part of our family. She had babysat the twins since they were infants, and the boys adored their grandmother. Patricia was the type of person who spoke her mind without a filter, which usually drove Sophia crazy but always amused me. She had an opinion on everything and wasn't afraid to share it. 3 weeks ago, Patricia made a casual comment that stayed with me. She was dropping off the boys after watching them for the afternoon and mentioned seeing Sophia at a downtown coffee shop. She was having a very serious talk with that attractive man, Patricia said with a knowing look. It was like a business meeting, but more personal, you know what I mean? Sophia had told me she was meeting a potential vendor for one of her charity events that day. When I asked her about it later, she confirmed that's exactly what it was. A boring meeting about catering for a silent auction. But Patricia's comment gnawed at me. My mother-in-law might be a gossip, but she wasn't stupid, and she knew the difference between a business meeting and something more intimate. That's when I began to pay closer attention to Sophia's schedule, cross-referencing what she told me with things I could verify. It wasn't anything dramatic. I didn't hire private detectives or go through her phone. I just became more aware of the inconsistencies. The charity meeting that supposedly ended at 9, but she didn't get home until 11. The doctor's appointment that was at 2:30, but when I called her office at 3, they said she hadn't been there. Individually, these small things meant nothing, but together, they painted a picture I didn't want to acknowledge. The breaking point arrived 2 weeks ago. Sophia announced that she needed to attend a weekend retreat for the Children's Hospital Fundraising Committee. It was a working weekend, she explained, where all the major donors and organizers would plan the upcoming gala. She'd be staying at a resort in the mountains, sharing a room with Laura, and would be back Sunday evening. I offered to watch the boys, and she seemed almost relieved that I didn't ask why I wasn't invited or why spouses weren't included. Her packing was careful, not like someone preparing for a work event, but like someone going on a romantic trip. I noticed she included the lingerie I had given her for her birthday. The set she claimed was too fancy for regular occasions. After she left Friday morning, I did something I had never done before. I called the resort. I asked to be connected to Sophia Sterling's room, claiming I needed to reach my wife about a family emergency. After checking their records, the front desk clerk politely informed me that no one by that name was registered for the weekend. That night, I sat in my home office, staring at the blueprints for the mixed-use development, which should have been the peak of my career. Instead, all I could think about was how skillfully my wife had been lying to me. How long had this been happening? Who was she with? How many of our friends knew? How many people were looking at me with pity, thinking I was too stupid or too preoccupied to realize my wife was cheating on me? The fury that took hold of me that night wasn't the hot, explosive kind that makes you throw things. It was a cold, calculated rage that settled deep in my bones and changed my entire perspective. I had built my business by being methodical, by planning every move and anticipating problems before they occurred. I had survived in construction, a fiercely competitive and unforgiving industry, by being tougher and smarter than my rivals. If Sophia thought she could play games with me, she was about to learn that I had been playing at a much higher level for much longer. On Sunday evening, she returned with stories about her productive weekend, about how much money they had raised, and how well the planning had gone. She kissed me as if nothing had changed, helped the boys with their homework, and asked about my weekend as though she genuinely cared. Her performance was flawless, which told me this wasn't her first time lying to my face. As she slept beside me that night, I made my decision. I would not confront her. I wouldn't demand explanations or try to work things out. People who betray you do not deserve a chance to explain themselves or make amends. They deserve consequences. And I was very good at building things, but even better at systematically taking them apart, piece by piece until only rubble remained. The next morning, I began making phone calls. Information is the most valuable currency in my business. I had spent 2 decades cultivating relationships with people who dealt in it. Private investigators, lawyers who specialized in messy divorces, accountants who knew how to make money vanish and reappear, and contractors who could handle sensitive jobs without asking questions. I had helped these people over the years, providing favorable bids, expediting permits, and solving problems that required my specific resources and connections. Now, it was time to call in some favors. John Delano had been a private investigator for 30 years before retiring to run security for my company. He still had contacts throughout the industry and owed me more than a few favors after I had helped his daughter secure a scholarship from the Sterling Foundation to a good college. When I called him Monday morning, he didn't ask questions. He just listened to what I needed and promised to have initial information by Wednesday. The name that came back surprised me. Dr. Mark Wilson, a pediatric heart surgeon at a major hospital. He was a married father of 2 teenagers, well known in the medical community, and, according to John's research, Sophia's lover for the past 8 months. They had met at a charity event for the Children's Hospital. Sophia hadn't been lying about her involvement with a fundraising committee, just about the extent of her involvement with Dr. Wilson. John's photos showed them at restaurants I'd never been to, holding hands in parking garages, and entering a hotel room they had been renting monthly under false names. The documentation was thorough and incriminating, but what struck me most was how comfortable they looked together. This wasn't a casual fling or a moment of weakness. They were planning a future together. That realization shifted my entire perspective. Sophia wasn't just cheating on me. She was systematically preparing to leave me. The charity work, the networking, the new clothes and schedule changes, it was all part of a larger scheme. Dr. Wilson was her exit strategy, her ticket to a new life with someone she presumably considered an upgrade from the construction worker who had gotten lucky. I spent the next week studying my targets. Dr. Wilson had built his reputation on being a compassionate pediatric cardiologist who saved children's lives. But his personal life told a different story. He had been married to his college sweetheart, Linda, for 18 years, and their marriage had produced 2 kids who thought their father was a hero. His wife was a high school art teacher who had put her career aspirations on hold to support his medical training and early career. According to John's deeper investigation, Dr. Wilson had a pattern. Sophia wasn't his first affair, just his most serious. He had had relationships with at least 3 other wealthy married women from the charity circuit over the past 5 years. They were always women who could provide something his middle-class lifestyle couldn't. The man was a predator who targeted vulnerable marriages, and Sophia had walked right into his trap. That should have made me feel sorry for her, but it didn't. Sophia wasn't some naive victim. She was a 42-year-old woman who had chosen to destroy our family for the thrill of something new. The fact that she had been manipulated by someone more experienced in deception did not absolve her of responsibility for her choices. By the second week, I had enough evidence to bury both of them in any divorce court in the country. I could have taken the easy way out, confronted Sophia with the photos, filed for divorce, and walked away with primary custody of the boys and most of our assets. But that wouldn't have been justice. That would have been letting them off too easily. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to have your life systematically dismantled by someone you had underestimated. I wanted Dr. Wilson to lose everything he had built on his reputation as a family man and caring physician. I wanted Sophia to realize that the comfortable life she had taken for granted was about to become a distant memory. The plan I developed was complex, requiring precision, timing, and multiple moving parts. It would take months to execute properly, but I had the patience and the resources to see it through. More importantly, I had the motivation. Every time I looked at my sons, every time I remembered the years I had spent building what I thought was a strong family, my resolve only grew stronger. Step 1 was to prepare financially. I began quietly moving money into accounts Sophia didn't know about, converting assets into forms that would be harder to divide in a divorce. I set up trusts for the boys that would protect their inheritance regardless of what happened between Sophia and me. I secured the business assets and made sure all of our joint holdings were properly documented and valued. If this was to be a war, I wanted to control the battlefield. Step 2 was to gather more intelligence. John's team expanded their surveillance to include Dr. Wilson's daily routine, his marriage, his medical practice, and his financial situation. I learned that he was heavily leveraged. A big house, expensive cars, and private school tuition for his kids. He was also facing a malpractice lawsuit from a surgery that had gone wrong 6 months earlier. The man was more vulnerable than his polished exterior suggested. Sophia's routine became predictable once I knew what to look for. Tuesday afternoons were for committee meetings that were actually extended hotel sessions with Dr. Wilson. Thursday evenings were gym time that included dinner at a restaurant across town. Weekend retreats were romantic getaways funded by money from our joint accounts. The more I learned, the angrier I became, but I channeled that anger into planning. Rage without direction is just destruction. Rage with a purpose becomes justice. Step 3 was the most delicate part. Positioning myself as the clueless but loving husband. While gathering the evidence I needed to destroy them both, I started asking Sophia more questions about her charity work and expressing interest in attending events with her. She skillfully deflected each suggestion, always with reasons why it would be boring for me or why spouses weren't invited. The lies came so easily that I realized she had probably been lying to me about smaller things for years. During this period, Sophia seemed happier than she had been in months. She was more affectionate, more engaged with the boys, and more interested in planning family activities. I understood why. The affair was giving her what she thought she wanted, and the guilt was being offset by increased attention to her family. It was a classic pattern John had warned me about. The hardest part was maintaining the facade with Daniel and Liam. They were only 8 years old, too young to understand what was happening but old enough to sense tension. I made sure they felt secure and loved, even as I prepared to turn their world upside down. That's one area where Sophia and I agreed completely. The boys would be protected from the ugliness of adult decisions as much as possible. 3 weeks into my investigation, I got the break I had been waiting for. John discovered that Dr. Wilson had been using his hospital access to prescribe medications for Sophia, anxiety drugs that she was supposedly needing for her stress over charity work. It was a small violation of medical ethics, but it established a pattern of Dr. Wilson abusing his professional position for personal gain. More importantly, John's financial investigation revealed that Dr. Wilson had been using money from the children's hospital fundraising account to pay for some of his expenses with Sophia. The amounts weren't large, and he had been careful to cover his tracks, but the paper trail was there for someone who knew how to look for it. The respected pediatric cardiologist was essentially embezzling money meant for sick children to fund his affair with my wife. That discovery changed everything. I had been planning personal revenge against two people who had betrayed me. Now, I was looking at something much bigger. A chance to expose corruption in a children's hospital and destroy a predator who had been using his position to manipulate vulnerable women for years. I called a meeting with my lawyer, my accountant, and John. We spent an entire afternoon mapping out a strategy that would accomplish multiple objectives. Secure my interests in the divorce, expose Dr. Wilson's criminal activity, protect the other women he had victimized, and ensure that both Sophia and her lover faced serious consequences for their choices. The timeline we developed was ambitious. Everything would need to happen within a 48-hour window to prevent either of them from covering their tracks or mounting a defense. It would require coordination with hospital administrators, law enforcement, and the media. Most importantly, it would require me to maintain my facade as the unsuspecting husband right up until the moment I revealed that I had known everything from the beginning. That night, I sat in my study, looking at the photographs John had taken of Sophia and Dr. Wilson together. They looked happy, carefree, like people who thought they had successfully deceived everyone around them. Sophia was laughing at something he had said, her hand on his arm, completely relaxed in a way I hadn't seen her with me in months. The pain of seeing those images was real, but it was overshadowed by something stronger. The satisfaction of knowing that their happiness was built on lies and would soon come crashing down around them. They thought they were clever. They thought they were getting away with something. They had no idea they were about to learn what it meant to cross someone who had spent 2 decades learning how to destroy things methodically and permanently. The next morning, Sophia announced that she needed to attend another weekend retreat, this time for the spring gala planning. She seemed excited about it, almost giddy. And I realized this was probably when she and Dr. Wilson were planning to tell their spouses about their relationship and start their new life together. Perfect timing. By Sunday evening, they would discover that their new life would be very different from what they had imagined. On Friday afternoon, I set the first phase in motion. While Sophia was packing for her retreat, I was meeting with Detective Ray Harrison from the White Collar Crime Unit. Ray and I had history. His brother worked for my company, and I had helped Ray out a few years back when he needed some off-the-books work done on his house. He owed me, and more importantly, he was the kind of cop who took personal satisfaction in nailing people who thought they were above the law. I laid out everything John had discovered about Dr. Wilson's embezzlement from the Children's Hospital Fund. Ray studied the financial documents and photos with the intensity of someone who had seen enough wealthy people try to buy their way out of consequences. When I finished explaining the situation, he leaned back in his chair and smiled grimly. This guy's been stealing from sick kids to pay for hotel rooms? Ray shook his head. Yeah, I can work with this. When do you want to move? Sunday morning, I told him. I want them to have their weekend. I want them to think they've won. That evening, Sophia kissed me goodbye and promised to call when she got to the resort. I wished her a wonderful time and told her I loved her. The lie came easier than I'd expected. Maybe because I was finally being honest about my intentions. On Saturday morning, I implemented phase 2. I called Patricia, Sophia's mother, and asked if she would mind keeping the boys overnight. I explained that I had some unexpected business to handle and didn't want to disrupt their weekend plans. Patricia was delighted to have extra time with her grandsons and agreed immediately. They'll be fine with Grandma, she smiled. What Patricia didn't know was that I had arranged for John to monitor her house that night. If Sophia tried to contact the boys or check on them, I wanted to know immediately. I also wanted witnesses to confirm that the children were safe and well cared for during the chaos that was about to unfold. On Saturday evening, while Sophia and Dr. Wilson were enjoying what they thought was a romantic dinner at their favorite restaurant 2 hours away, I was meeting with Linda Wilson, Dr. Wilson's wife. John had approached her earlier in the week, claiming to be a private investigator working on a malpractice case involving her husband. When she expressed confusion about what case he was referring to, John had gently suggested that there might be other issues in Dr. Wilson's professional life that she wasn't aware of. Linda was exactly what I had expected. An intelligent, devoted wife who had been completely blindsided by her husband's behavior. When I showed her the photographs and financial records, she didn't cry or rage. She just sat there for a long time, studying the evidence with the careful attention of someone whose world was being systematically reconfigured. How long has this been going on? She asked finally. 8 months with my wife, I told her. But based on what we found, probably years with others. She nodded slowly. I wondered about the late nights, the weekend conferences that never seemed to result in any career advancement. I wondered about the money. We make a good income, but somehow we never seem to have enough saved. Linda was tougher than her mild-mannered exterior suggested. When I explained what was going to happen Sunday morning, she didn't hesitate to agree to play her part. She wanted Dr. Wilson to face consequences not just for the affair, but for the systematic way he had been lying to their children about who their father really was. Those kids worship him, she said. They think he's some kind of hero who saves children for a living. They deserve to know the truth about what kind of man he really is. Sunday morning arrived cold and clear. I woke up early and made myself coffee. Sitting in the kitchen where Sophia and I had shared thousands of breakfasts over the years, it felt appropriate to begin the end of our marriage in the place where so much of our daily life had played out. At 3 a.m, the phone rang at Patricia's house, where my sons were sleeping peacefully. But the call wasn't about the boys being in danger. It was the signal that everything was going according to plan. John was positioned outside the hotel where Sophia and Dr. Wilson were staying. Detective Harrison and his team were preparing to execute search warrants for Dr. Wilson's office and home. Linda Wilson was ready to confront her husband with evidence of his affairs and embezzlement. The hospital administration had been quietly notified that one of their prominent physicians was about to become a major liability. The call was John confirming that our targets were still in the hotel and unaware of what was coming. Patricia, following the script I had given her, called me in a panic. "Come now," she whispered, frantic. "Something's wrong with the babies." I rushed to Patricia's house, my heart pounding, not from fear for my sons but from anticipation of what was about to unfold. When I arrived, Patricia was trembling with nerves, not because anything was wrong with Daniel and Liam, but because she knew she was playing a crucial role in exposing her daughter's betrayal. The moment I saw them, I called 911 with shaking hands. Except I wasn't calling 911 about my sons. I was calling Detective Harrison to confirm that I was in position and that Phase 3 could begin. At 6 a.m., while Sophia and Dr. Wilson were probably still asleep in their hotel room, Detective Harrison's team executed simultaneous search warrants at Dr. Wilson's medical office and his family home. Linda had provided access to his home office and financial records, and the hospital had granted permission to search his work computer and files. What they found was worse than I had hoped. Dr. Wilson hadn't just been embezzling from the Children's Hospital Fund. He had been systematically billing insurance companies for procedures he hadn't performed, using his reputation to write fraudulent prescriptions, and accepting kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies for unnecessary treatments. The man I had initially seen as just an adulterous doctor was actually a comprehensive fraud who had been using sick children as a cover for his crimes. At 8 a.m., Dr. Wilson was arrested at the hotel. Sophia watched in shock as the man she had thought was her ticket to a better life was led away in handcuffs, charged with embezzlement, insurance fraud, and violations of the Controlled Substances Act. The local news crews that happened to be in the area to cover the arrest of a prominent physician also captured footage of Sophia, looking disheveled and confused, trying to understand what was happening. By 10 a.m., the story was breaking on every local news station. Prominent pediatric cardiologist arrested for embezzling from Children's Hospital Fund. The details of his multiple affairs, his fraudulent medical practices, and his abusive position were all part of the public record. Sophia called me in hysterics around noon, claiming she had been visiting a friend when Dr. Wilson was arrested and had no idea what was happening. She swore she knew nothing about his criminal activities and begged me to believe that she was just an innocent victim who had been manipulated by a master deceiver. I let her believe I was buying her story. I picked her up from the police station where she had been questioned as a potential accomplice. I took her home and listened patiently as she explained how she had been fooled by Dr. Wilson's lies. I nodded sympathetically when she claimed she had never suspected he was married, and I held her when she cried about how violated she felt. For 3 days, I played the role of the supportive husband whose wife had been victimized by a predatory criminal. Sophia seemed genuinely relieved that her secret was out and that I was standing by her. She promised to never see Dr. Wilson again, to focus completely on our family, and to spend the rest of her life making up for her mistake. On Wednesday evening, I asked her to sit down in our living room because I had something important to discuss. "I know you've been lying to me," I said calmly. "I know about every hotel room, every fake charity meeting, and every weekend retreat that never existed. I know you've been having an affair with Dr. Wilson for 8 months, and I know you were planning to leave me for him." Sophia's face went through a series of expressions: shock, denial, fear, and finally a kind of resignation. "Marcus, I can explain." "No need," I interrupted. "I have photographs, financial records, hotel registrations, and witness statements documenting everything. I also have evidence that you knew about Dr. Wilson's criminal activities and helped him cover them up." That last part wasn't entirely true, but Sophia's reaction told me everything I needed to know. She had known, at least partially, about his illegal activities. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "I want you to understand that choices have consequences," I told her. "You chose to destroy our marriage, lie to our children, and associate with a criminal. Now you get to live with the results of those choices." I handed her a manila envelope containing divorce papers, a complete financial disclosure showing she would be entitled to minimal assets due to her adultery, and a custody agreement that gave me primary physical custody of the boys with supervised visitation for her. "You can sign these voluntarily," I explained, "or we can go to court where all the evidence of your affair and possible criminal involvement will become public record." Your choice. Sophia stared at the papers for a long time. You planned all of this? I responded to your choices. I corrected. You started this game when you decided our marriage wasn't worth honoring. I just played it better than you did. She signed the papers that night. The next morning, she moved out of our house and into a small apartment across town. Dr. Wilson was convicted and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. His marriage was over, his career was destroyed, and his children had changed their last name to distance themselves from his crimes. Sophia eventually moved to another state and started over. She sees the boys during school vacations and holidays, and we maintain a cordial relationship for their sake. But she knows, and I know, and everyone in our circle knows that some betrayals are unforgivable. I never remarried. I focused on raising Daniel and Liam, expanding my business even further, and enjoying the life I had created for myself and my sons. The boys thrived under my care, and I made sure they understood that integrity and loyalty are more than just words. They are the bedrock of any meaningful relationship. Sometimes people ask if I ever regret being so harsh with Sophia, if I think I should have given her a second chance for the sake of our family. The answer is always the same. I built my life on certain principles, and one of them is that actions have consequences. Sophia learned that lesson the hard way, but she learned it thoroughly. The best part of the whole situation is that it taught my sons something valuable about character. They watched how I handled betrayal with patience and strategic thinking rather than with rage and emotion. They learned that when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them the first time. And they learned that some people in this world will try to take advantage of your decency and trust. When that happens, you don't just get mad. You get even. You get even in a way that ensures they never underestimate you again. That serves as a warning to anyone else who might consider testing your boundaries. As I tell Daniel and Liam whenever the subject comes up, respect is earned, trust is given, but betrayal is never forgotten. People who understand that simple truth tend to have much better relationships and far fewer problems in life. The ones who don't understand it learn the hard way, just like their mother did. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.